It's an all-new season of AC/DC Beyond the Thunder. Are you ready? With your host, Kurt Squires, with Greg Ferguson and Eric Gill. For those about to talk, we salute you.
Yes, it is, my friends. It's another edition of AC/DC Beyond the Thunder, the podcast with the biggest balls of all. We're warming things up a bit with today's episode featuring a beachside interview with a critically acclaimed Canadian singer, songwriter, guitarist, violinist, Kathleen Edwards, who Rolling Stone declared one of the year's most promising new acts when she first entered the music scene. And believe us, folks, to quote Bon Scott, she's got balls. She's appeared on Letterman, Austin City Limits, NPR's Tiny Desk Concert, and many a festival, including Bonnaroo, and then eventually sharing the bill with Akadaka on the Toronto Rocks concert stage, hosted by the Rolling Stones. But we first fell smitten with Kathleen Edwards after hearing her reimagined version of AC/DC's highest charting single of all time in the U.S., Money Talks. Welcome back. I'm your faithful host, Kurt Squires, serving up well-known fans who've been influenced by this Hall of Fame band known as AC/DC. Eric Kielb is behind the soundboard over there. Hi, Eric. Hi. And joining me is the man who actually mic'd up and filmed this lovely lady, Mr. Greg Ferguson. Greg, what's up?
Hello, hello, hello. Hey, guys. Hey, Eric. Hey, Kurt. Good to be back in the booth with you guys and for another episode of Beyond the Thunder.
Likewise. Greg, what's your memory from this truly unique interview?
I really don't remember how we ended up tracking down Kathleen. At the time, I know we were just working on a documentary and kind of wherever we were, anytime we would always look up people who were in town with us and reach out and try to possibly get an interview with them. So I think our paths crossed in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. It was summer. I do remember that. I remember arriving and I think we met at a restaurant. We had lunch with the band and Kathleen.
Right.
The restaurant was right next to the beach, so we just kind of went up on this bluff above the beach, set up our interview there.
Yeah.
And if you listen close enough, you can kind of hear the waves in the background.
Yeah, that's right.
But at first I was worried that this isn't really the right place to do this type of interview, but honestly, Kathleen's so chill and so relaxed. This place totally set the tone for this interview, which was perfect.
It was perfect because not only did we not have many female AC/DC fans on our show at the time, but also we didn't have many interviews outside.
Yeah.
Let alone at the beach in Cape Cod. And I believe it was my first trip to P-Town. I had no idea what P-Town was.
Yes, I did take you all the way to the end of the Cape there to P-Town. No real warning of what to expect. And that was pretty interesting and pretty fun.
Yes, a very friendly and fiery redheaded lady who had a great sense of humor, very talented, and who was more than glad to open up and share her love and affection for AC/DC, right?
Yeah, I when you think about Kathleen Edwards and her music, you might not realize there's a direct relation to AC/DC. But, with talking with her, we found out a lot of her influencers were rockers, from AC/DC all the way to Zeppelin. Being a songwriter, it was really interesting to hear her take on AC/DC and why their music's had so much success and why their songs are so popular. And as a singer, it was really cool to hear her take on Brian's voice and how much respect she has for his range and his singing and how hard it is. I mean, she compared Brian's singing to opera.
I know.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
A few years after we did this interview with Kathleen, she was just finishing up a tour and she got home and basically hit the reset button. She packed up her guitars. She stopped singing, stopped writing music, and she opened a coffee shop. And it was basically time for her to kind of get things back in perspective and maybe work on a few demons in her closet. And it's no secret that she had some struggles with anxiety and depression. So I think it was a good time for her to kind of work through those.
Yeah, good for her.
Yeah, and 8 years later, she comes out with a new album, which is awesome. So
That's cool.
yeah, 2020, she came out with Total Freedom, and she's currently out on tour right now.
Sweet. Well, I hope we can catch her on tour because she was just such a fun personality. Okay, Greg, time to put on the suntan lotion, get a little sand in our toes, go back to the beach for our AC/DC Beyond the Thunder interview with Kathleen Edwards.
Let's do this.
Kathleen, welcome.
Oh, thanks.
Before we jump in and talk AC/DC, I wanted to discuss your past. I read where your father was a diplomat, a former deputy minister of foreign affairs, which is fascinating because that meant your family had to move from Ottawa to places like Korea and Switzerland. So while you're traipsing around the world and picking up musical instruments along the way, did these particular locations influence your musical roots growing up? Because you're playing local pubs and such like that?
No, living overseas didn't influence me in terms of what was being played. Although, to be fair, in Switzerland, I started playing classical violin. Like, that's where I started taking lessons. And so in that sense, there was an influence. But musically, I would say living overseas, what it does, it isolates you. Mm-hmm. And so you really latch on to something that you identify with in a way that I think is above and beyond sort of just having the pop culture, sort of everything on the periphery, just being present in your life. You had to actually go out and seek it, and you had to sort of latch onto it for it to be available to you when you're living in Korea or Switzerland or wherever.
Yeah, that's cool. And did you learn to play the guitar the same time as you learned violin?
Oh, violin, yeah. Violin was first when I was about 5, 6. And then I studied until I was in the end of high school.
And important to note that AC/DC wasn't your first true love either. It was more like folk rock artists that you had heard your older brother play, right? Like Neil Young and Tom Petty and Bob Dylan.
Yeah, and it wasn't actually, Dylan was the one that I remember the least.
Okay.
My brother played a lot of, Neil Young was sort of the big musical influence in my house, and then my brother he was the one who got me my first Tom Petty CD, and Tom Petty and Neil they're sort of tied for first.
Yeah, nice.
I have a hard time picking one or the other, but I love them for different reasons, and my brother was responsible for that influence in my life. Otherwise, I'd probably still be listening to Irene Cara. What a feeling!
Wow, Irene Cara from Flashdance. Talk about a flashback from the 80s.
It's funny, when Michael Jackson died, the first person I called was my brother, because when we were kids, my brother was Michael Jackson and I was Irene Cara, because that, those were the two big pop stars I guess I would have been 6 or 7.
Yeah.
Thriller came out, and my brother was 9 or 10, and those were the, two big male-female pop stars.
Oh, yeah. And that was the era to sell albums, too, because you talk about, does it blow your mind that Michael Jackson's Thriller from the 1980s is the #1 best-selling album of all time, and another 80s album, AC/DC's Back in Black, is #2?
Yeah. I get why Thriller's #1 and why AC/DC's #2. I'm thrilled that AC/DC's in the top 5. And, Back in Black, I'm sure I've bought 5 copies of that record. Because, you play it so much and then it gets scratched.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You have to just replace it. And I'm not a downloader, so, I'm uptight, so I buy the records. So I've contributed to the top 5 all-time album sales of Back in Black.
I know. I'm very guilty of buying way too many copies of that album. And I have to assume that Germany makes up a lot of those sales. Some of the most rabid AC/DC fans that we've ever met on the planet.
There's so many Germans in the world. Who knew?
It's true. It's true.
I didn't know.
Yeah, Germans, #1, gotta be.
Followed closely second by David Hasselhoff, yes. And third, Scorpions.
Oh, well played.
Yes.
Okay, let's play a little game, Kathleen. Describe to our listeners the feeling one might get the first time that they hear AC/DC. What might their music cause one to do?
I'm sure that this is a common description of what AC/DC does to you, but AC/DC makes you want to drive fast.
Yeah.
which is great for the municipalities of North America who fine people and make, like City Hall has a reno next year because of AC/DC speeding tickets. Like AC/DC makes you want to drive fast, and that's
I like that.
that is the quintessential feeling you get when you listen to a band like AC/DC.
That's too funny. I actually saw a print ad at one time that ranked the top 5 bands to get speeding tickets to. Air Supply was at like 1%, and AC/DC was ranked at the top with 91%. So it sounds like you're correct in that assumption.
You feel uninhibited. You don't care. You don't care if you drive faster than you usually do. You don't care if you have a couple extra shooters at night. Not and driving, but yes.
Of course not, no. But let me ask you this. AC/DC Beyond the Thunder unveils how this one band has influenced so many individuals who've gone on to do some pretty amazing things with their lives, including yourself, but also famous actors and authors and athletes. And since you sang at the National Hockey League All-Star Game,
Yeah.
and you're Canadian, I assume you are a hockey fan.
All Canadians are naturally connected to hockey.
But I'm just checking. You are,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay. So you've experienced this firsthand. Why is AC/DC so synonymous with kicking things up a notch when it comes to arenas and stadiums and whatnot?
Because AC/DC's like cocaine in a musical format. It makes you feel good. It's like instant serotonin. You naturally, something happens in your stomach, and there's the kick drum, and then there's like, the bass supporting the kick drum, and then there's just the groove, Dun, 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 dun. That's that's it, man. That's it. That's like instant serotonin.
Yeah.
You could do this, or you can just like press play and you get the same thing. Not that I know, but yes, same thing, right? And I think that's if you have an arena full of people, you want to make them feel good about buying a ticket. You want to make them feel good for being there.
Right.
AC/DC, man.
Yeah. Well, as a fellow musician who's a singer, songwriter, and who can play multiple instruments, describe what AC/DC does that no other band can replicate. I mean, what makes AC/DC so special that not just to fans, but also their peers as well?
I think they are the masters of pocket.
Absolutely.
And it's sort of, which is sort of a term that a lot of bass players and drummers would use, where when you sit in a pocket, that means whatever groove you're playing, it feels good and it's the right tempo and it sits where you don't have to think about it. It just kind of comes, and they are the masters of pocket. So if you can come up with a good pocket, that's sort of like the X factor in music. And how they've been able to do it over and over and over is sort of just, it is the X factor, because it's just a combination of these people who know how to recreate that feeling over and over again.
Right, right. So, well, if AC/DC has this seemingly simple and successful secret recipe, then is that something that you think other musicians try to replicate, even a singer-songwriter like yourself? Or do you think that storytelling is more important than the riff?
I don't know if I know how to answer. I don't know how other people approach that. I think songwriters are different in the sense that they want a great song, and groove might come second. For them, content is usually maybe takes priority over the pocket or over the groove of it. But
yeah. And what about like a record producer?
I think record producers sort of are people who might be a little bit more in tune with the idea of what AC/DC has done. And it's not about replicating their idea, it's about taking them as an example and going, now that's a pocket. And it's great sounds, it's great production, and then it's great players.
Right, absolutely. Okay, so let's get down to it. The reason why we tracked you down, Kathleen, here in Cape Cod, is because back in the early aughts, the early 2000s, I moonlighted as a DJ, as the AC/DC guy, on 102.9 WBLM. And there was a fellow jock by the name of Charlie Jacobson. And he handed me a live track of you covering AC/DC's Money Talks. Totally caught me by surprise. Was it because it was a female alt country singer-songwriter? Absolutely. But I was also caught off guard by your selection and then your arrangement of that particular song. With AC/DC's massive catalog to choose from, why did you choose Money Talks? I'm curious.
Okay, so everyone asked me why Money Talks.
Sorry.
I like Money Talks because sort of it was like, oh, hi. It was like I like Money Talks because it was a B hit. It wasn't Hell's Bells. It wasn't Shook Me All Night Long. And
yeah, very true. Very true.
I just always liked the idea that I like covering songs that are a little less conventional. Like I would never get up on stage and do Hell's Bells because I don't have a Chinese symbol on stage. I may one day, but I don't now.
You gotta save up for that prop for sure.
And Money Talks was just an easy one, and I liked the lyrics, and it was all about, manipulative women, and, it's like every Rolling Stone song that's ever been written. But I like the idea that it's a little less conventional than sort of what people think of AC/DC as. Their top 5 would be this, 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 and this, and Money Talks probably wouldn't be in it.
No.
So I like it, and the best thing about a cover song when you play a cover song is that you start the song off, and I play it a little, I don't come out with like the full band. I start on electric playing, D, tailored suits, chauffeur cars. And people are like, I don't know if I know the song. She says it's a cover song, but I'm not sure. And then, come on, love me for the money. Come on. And that's when people start doing this. You see a little bit more of this going on in the crowd. And then by the end of the chorus, people are like, no!
Maybe a little known fact about that song, after going through like 200 cassette tapes, Money Talks was a riff that Angus brought to Brother Malcolm, who quickly got his approval on this rather pop-friendly tune from AC/DC about money, greed, lust, and, all the other good things that make a hit song. But actually, it became AC/DC's highest-ranked U.S. single to date, believe it or not, one that you turned into a rather cool cover tune. And now you can truthfully say that you've opened for AC/DC, right, Kathleen?
I didn't really open for AC/DC, but I was one of several artists on a bill in Toronto a few years back.
I was there.
You were there at the SARS concert?
Yes, and I actually saw you.
It's funny because I thought I saw you too. You were like, I looked at 490,000 faces, and you were 400.
Yeah, 500,000 people.
491, I don't know.
Oh man, I had never been so freaked out in my life around so many people. It's like 500,000 fans, and you couldn't move. But once the all too polite Canadian crowd settled in, all was good. Not so much for Justin Timberlake, who was pelted with water bottles when he came out on stage. But what a bill. You had Jeff Healey, Flaming Lips, The Guess Who, Rush, of course you, and of all of these rock gods, who did you get to meet?
We did a photo shoot at the end of all the artists, and it was such a surreal day because, the Stones, AC/DC, blah, blah, blah. Everyone was, it was really special. I still don't even know who's, I had to suck to get on that bill, but somehow I did. And I got to meet the guys, and I met Brian Johnson, and they had just got off stage. And I said, you didn't play Money Talks. And he said, I fucking hate singing that song. I'm like, what? He goes, it's too high. it's too high. I don't sing it because it's too high. So he must it must have been recorded, and it was a great groove, and they never play it anymore.
Right. I actually know that Brian told you this because I watched the bonus backstage footage from the Toronto Rock SARS concert DVD, and there you were talking to Brian about that very topic.
What?
Yes. You never saw this?
What? You saw what?
You were backstage talking with Brian.
No.
Yes, you're backstage. You don't remember this?
Oh no, because I was there. I remember it.
Right.
Really?
Yeah. There's a photo session like you're talking about, and then you're chatting with Brian about Money Talks, and I think he says something like, "Well, that's a stinker to sing."
Yeah, he didn't like the song, which is understandable because I have all my hit songs. I have songs I don't like playing. So, but it was really this wonderful moment. I got to meet him, and I'm like, I'm in heels, so I'm as tall as he is. And hi, Brian. My name's Kitty, because my friends call me Kitty. My name's Kitty, and I played today, and this is just a thrill to see you play, and blah blah. He goes, Kitty, you're a fine lass. And I was like,
That's awesome.
And so I got a picture with him. My manager happened to be staying there, so I quickly got a picture with him. Click. He sends me the picture, I got it developed, and I send it to my mom. She had it framed, she puts it on the mantle.
Nice.
And I married an older guy. He's not that much, he doesn't look older, but I married an older guy, and when some old friends would come over to my mom's house, they'd say, "Oh, is that Kathleen's new husband?" And my mom's like, "No, that's Brian Johnson, the lead singer of AC/DC.
Oh, that's awesome. What a wonderful moment. I love that. Tell us more about that special day on July 30th, 2003. Give us some of that on-stage or backstage AC/DC dirt, if you've got any. I mean, and what was it like for you to be among these icons looking out towards a virtual sea of people?
The nice thing was I was so burned out from being on the road. It was my first year on the road, and it was every day. I hadn't had a day off. It was all new, and it was so thrown at me in a way that I just became I was sort of numb because I was so exhausted. Mm-hmm. And that was great for going into that scenario because I didn't really have time to think about that I was going to play in front of that many people and the type of exposure that was going to be.
Yeah.
And it was an amazing experience. Like, I kept being told this is a once-in-a-lifetime thing, and I thought, well, that's not really possible. And now I look back and I go, yes, it definitely was. And I got to watch AC/DC from in front of the soundboard.
Wow.
And I'm still not entirely sure how I swung that one because no one was allowed in the pit. There's this long tunnel pit right in front of the stage, and I got to stand about 20, 30 feet in front of the soundboard. So basically the best seat in the house.
Wow.
And there wasn't someone throwing up on me, which was really nice. So I stood there, and I knew I loved the band, but it was the first time live, and it was just, every song finishes, and your hands are in the air, like you just can't help yourself. You're just like, yeah!
Ain't no bad place to be. I said, hey, baby, ain't no bad place to be. I said, hey, ain't no bad place to be.
That day, I said to myself, this is probably going to be my own personal version of Woodstock with that many people. Actually, more people than there were at Woodstock. It was a historic moment, and all for a good cause, as Toronto needed a boost in the wake of the SARS crisis.
It was such a special day, like hanging out with the Flaming Lips and getting to watch people from side stage.
Yeah.
It was amazing,
One of my favorite moments from that day was getting up the next morning and gathering all the local newspapers from the hotel, and nearly every single bit of coverage say how AC/DC blew the Stones off the stage. And I mean, this was for a good cause and all. And here's the media slagging one of the greatest rock and roll bands of all time. But inside, I was like, yes. And I actually got Dan Aykroyd, who hosted the day's events, to sign the front page of the Toronto Star to commemorate this massive victory for the band and for Canada.
I'm sure you know this, but my understanding is that the Stones are committed to do this gig. And, they got They got a really nice paycheck, and it was for a good cause, and everything was awesome. But apparently they sort of had signed AC/DC up for it without their consent in a way that was like, I think they sort of just assumed that AC/DC would come and do this, and I think they marked the gig as, we're going to play these fuckers under the table. That's my understanding, but it could be just rumor, amongst musicians. But my understanding was that, they were happy to participate, but they'd sort of been wrangled into it by the Stones, and there was a major amount of cost that they had to absorb for bringing all their stuff over and back, and I don't think they had really sort of asked them. Is my this is a really vague story. There's not a lot of specifics in it.
No, actually, let me just say this. I was just rereading the book AC/DC, Let There Be Rock, where Malcolm tells author Susan Messino, well, we did blow them off the stage at the SARS benefit in Toronto. I know that much. So I think we're safe. Why don't you spill it?
Yeah, we're going to play a show that is going to make everyone think that when we're done, the show is over.
Yeah.
And they did.
And of course, another great highlight was seeing Angus and Mal join their heroes on stage, welcomed by the Stones to perform a truly awesome rendition of Rock Me Baby by B.B. King, a man who influenced both bands with his soulful vocal style and distinct guitar playing. Seeing Mal trading riffs with Keith and Ronnie and watching Angus try to upstage Jagger was true bliss for me live in the audience, and I was in pure heaven watching that very moment in time that night. I'll never forget it.
Yeah.
Rock me, baby. Rock me all night long. Rock me, baby. Rock me all night long. I want you to rock me, little girl, until my back ain't got no bone.
Rock bands, a lot of times, rock bands about the groove. It's all about that feeling you get. It's about the serotonin. It's about it makes you want to drive fast. But the other thing AC/DC has is that they write great songs. And the worst thing in the world for me as a songwriter is to put on a song that someone's excited about and you don't know what the song's about. Worst thing in the world. With AC/DC, you don't have that problem. The Jack. I know what that song's about. It's about the Jack. And we all know what the Jack is. And, Whole Lotta Rosie. We know what that's about. It's about fucking a big, big, big girl. And I love that. I fucking love that. Don't beat around the bush.
So your direct connection to AC/DC is not just playing the SARS benefit with AC/DC and the Stones, but also covering an AC/DC song, which it's not an easy thing to do. And so now you're among those brave enough who've taken on the challenge of covering the mighty AC/DC. Is there an artist out there who's thrown their hat in the ring where upon listening you went, oh God, what were they thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure my cover version isn't a life-altering experience.
No, you know what? You made it your own. That's what I liked about it.
It's, like I said, it's really hard to pick a song like Hell's Bells or Back in Black because the original version is so untouchable.
They're too big.
You can't really create the girth of that song in a cover song. You really can't, unless you really reinvented the song in such a way that was completely out of context.
One of the most consistently worst ranked AC/DC cover songs is poor Celine Dion's version of You Shook Me All Night Long.
There's that scene in Office Space where the guy's driving to work and he's listening to rap really loud, like gangster rap, and it's all about killing people and fucking, and then the homeless guy walks towards his car and he turns down the music because he doesn't, he's a little intimidated.
Right.
I kind of feel a little bit like that is Celine Dion listening to AC/DC. Like, it's like, when I listen to AC/DC, I'm in my '88 Chevy Suburban and I have it so loud and I don't give a fuck if, it's too loud.
Right.
Celine, Celine's probably been given a couple songs of like, okay, you're going to Vegas, let's put some cover songs into the show. Here's some great options. She's like, okay, I'm gonna go play some golf, and then, no, I love Celine. You know what? Like, what a singer. To be fair,
Great singer.
if there's anyone in the world who's got the vocal chops to cover a song like that, Celine's it. It's just, I'd rather see it in a meathead rock bar in New Jersey than I would in Las Vegas.
AC/DC Beyond the Thunder, as you know, is about this band and how they've influenced our culture in truly unique ways around the globe. Do you have a favorite example of how AC/DC has done that, even outside of music?
Yeah, no. You know who I thought about this today before the interview. I was thinking about how what the answer to that is and how we see it. And it's so infiltrated pop culture and music culture that we don't even realize it because it's being delivered by people who are brilliant. For example, Jack Black, brilliant comedian. I will see his worst movie ever because I think he's brilliant and he makes me laugh and it's a good time.
School of Rock.
School of Rock. He's playing an SG. And where do you think that comes from? That's Angus. That's Angus's influence. And this is Jack Black reinventing that influence. And that was a kid's movie. As you know, he didn't swear once in School of Rock. It was an entirely for children, young kids to watch and like rediscover and fall in love with rock and roll. And I'm sorry, but that's his entire character. And I know he has lots of music. Jack Black has a ton of musical influences, but AC/DC has really got to be on the top 3. And it's so obvious when he's playing and doing these things that really are going to penetrate the psyche of young kids, and they don't even know it. And they don't even know, like, this came from Angus Young.
No. And that's a great example. We've been trying to get Jack on the show, and I hope we can finally do that. But if you were to strip away that schoolboy uniform, speaking of Jack Black and wearing that uniform, which was awesome, and what if you were to take away the working cap and the major stage props and so on? Angus just comes out in jeans and a t-shirt, let's say. Would it have made a difference in how AC/DC connected with all of us?
Oh, I don't think it would make a difference. I think at the time, like anything, people stand on their own, and part of what they wear and how they present themselves is a big part of that. And when it's completely against what is, what's trend or what hasn't been done, then it's so unique.
Now, I know no one's ever asked you this question, but I'm going to throw it out there. Have you ever done the duck walk while playing your cover of Money Talks live?
Oh my God. Why would I do the duck walk while singing Money Talks?
Well, because it's a tribute to Angus.
Well, isn't that a tribute to Bo Diddley?
Well, actually, Chuck Berry.
Chuck Berry, sorry. Ugh.
Well, maybe you're drinking a little bit on stage and you just decided to channel Angus or Chuck.
One of the guys in my band does an incredible duck walk, but we don't do it during Money Talks. Oh, do we?
I don't know, do you?
No, we do it during, I cover an Outfield song, and we do it during the cover of that.
Let me guess, I Don't Want to Lose Your Love Tonight.
Josie's on a vacation far away. So many things that I want to say.
No, I like my girls a little bit older.
Awesome. Fucking awesome. Where are we?
Oh my God, just in case you're wondering what's happening, listeners, that was a random beach bogey walking on the beach in the background of this interview without missing a beat, who was just trading lines of The Outfield with Kathleen Edwards, one of the 80s great one-hit wonders. That was impressive. How does he know that?
He knows it because he loves The Outfield.
That was quite randomly awesome. Since Canada is the ongoing theme here today, it's probably a good question to ask you about why AC/DC loves recording in Vancouver at Bryan Adams' joint alongside the great Mike Frazier, a place they've recorded more than any other in their history. So why do you think that's so?
The Warehouse is a great studio and really one of the best studios in the world in terms of a facility, in terms of equipment, in terms of it just being a world class and sort of like the par of what a great recording studio is.
Yeah. They get great sound.
They get great sounds there, and it's a beautiful city to work in.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's probably why they picked the Warehouse to go. Canada generally has a reputation of having a little bit less, you see a paparazzi and you kind of go, no one, in some places people flock to it, go, who's there, who's there? In Canada it's like, who the fuck cares? Get off my fucking driveway. Like, I'm trying to do something here, get out of my way. No one cares, no one gives a shit. So I think there's a bit of that vibe in Canada where people feel a bit more comfortable. They're not gonna be, AC/DC will always be stalked wherever they go, but I think there's a little less stalking in Canada.
And I don't know why I bring this up. Maybe because you're a female, or you're a singer-songwriter, or because you've covered a song off AC/DC's Razor's Edge, or all three. But I remember when Rolling Stone did a cover story on Sinead O'Connor back in the early 90s. And she offered to give a list of the records she hated, referencing AC/DC's new single, Thunderstruck, specifically saying, quote, "Oh God, his voice is just horrendous." I couldn't believe she said it at the time. So much so that I'm still upset about it for some reason. How would you respond to that, just to make me feel better?
Well, the one thing I do know about Brian Johnson is that over the years, understandably, his vocal range has really taken a hit, like anybody's would. Someone was saying the other day, Paul McCartney even has a hard time getting through a show sometimes. It's not like, it's a really hard thing to do. It's a really intense experience, singing every note bang on from start to finish. If you see a lot of shots of Brian, he's kind of holding his head in a little bit, and he's compressing, from what I've been told from a couple of people, good sources, that it's actually like, it's the only way he can hit some of those notes now is to really sort of put pressure on his vocal cords, just sort of like, and that stuff is hard to sing. It's as hard as opera, it's as hard as anything. It's hard to sing that style of vocal. So I'm sure that for some people it's like nails on a chalkboard, but
for most of us, it's awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah. So what's your favorite part about having such a love affair for this band, and how they've influenced you as a musician? I mean, what have they given you besides the great music?
To be able to stand on stage and say, I'm sound checking, and I pick up my Les Paul Jr., and I turn out my AC-10, and I can play a lick from AC/DC, and I can just see the bar staff or anyone who's in the room when I'm sound checking go, holy shit, she's okay. And that is like the greatest thrill in the world. Not that I can impress somebody, but that I actually really get off on that feeling. And it's like being a 15-year-old in your bedroom, and you're sitting there like you got the little book, and you're like, okay, I gotta put my finger here, finger here, finger here. And those guys, I know, spend hours trying to figure out solos to stuff, trying to figure out, how to play those licks.
Like Back in Black.
Back in Black, it's the easiest lick in the world, but there's something about it that's completely amazing. It's E, D, A.
Yeah.
Those are like the easiest chords in the world.
True.
How come AC/DC made it like this unit? You play those three chords together and everyone goes, what the fuck is that? Yes! It's
true.
amazing.
So true.
It's the X factor.
So they gave you a little street cred, or big balls, shall I say.
Yes, my balls have really grown since I started playing AC/DC licks. My balls are massive.
Oh, man. Kathleen Edwards, thank you so much for getting us outdoors, beachside, to have a little fun in the sun and a little sunburned, watching people walk around with big balls and their little Speedos, all while professing our love for AC/DC. But alas, we have one last question for you. AC/DC in just one word.
You know what? I thought about this. Not that I thought you would ask me this, but I thought, like, what is a word that sort of, for me, like I think it's going to be a totally personal thing. For me, it's sex.
Oh.
And not because it makes me want to have sex, well, it does, but I could give up sex if I could play, like, I get that same feeling, sorry, this is a lot of information, but I get that same feeling, just that, like, that feeling where everything's good and everything's happy and your body is so present when I can play an AC/DC lick. There's something about it. Like, I could take one or the other. Actually, no, that's not true. I couldn't give up sex. But it is like that. It's that, I think that's what it is. It's fucking sex. And sex is great.
Oh boy, man, we certainly got our money's worth out of your one-word answer for sure. But how about this? Let's play you out doing your favorite Brian Johnson impersonation from your favorite AC/DC moment of all time, and that'll make for a fine ending. Play us out, Kathleen.
Katie, you're a fine lass.
AC/DC Beyond the Thunder theme song, Trailer Trash, written and performed by Gannon Arnold. VO talent by Bruce Jacobson. Cinematography and sound recording by Greg Ferguson. Edited and mixed by Eric Keel. Written, directed, and hosted by Kurt Squires. Produced by Greg Ferguson, Eric Keel, and Kurt Squires. AC/DC Beyond the Thunder is a Squires LLC current motion production. Copyright Beyond the Thunder podcast, all rights reserved. This has been a Nat Attack presentation.
Shazbot Nanu Nana.